Hello and welcome to IndiePod, an indie games podcast, your weekly source for all the indie games news you need to know. This week we are bringing you 4 awesome indie game news stories before, of course, we hop in to News Cram, God Bless the Crowd, answer your listener questions, and probably less than that, because I can't go more, apparently. You can only go less than 100%. You can't go, there's no plus ultra in this world. Fuck me.
Every week now, the minute you get to that last part of the section, I'm always like, and more?
Yeah. You're like, what's he gonna say? Is he gonna do it? Yeah, and I always look over at you, and I'm just like, he's thinking about it. He's thinking I'm gonna do it. So, of course, before we get into any of that, not the more, but just that in general, I would like to introduce myself, Vaughn Hyde, alongside my illustrious co-host, the biggest of average, Josh Boys. How you doing today, Big Josh Boy?
I'm doing well. No guests today, just us.
I mean, I don't actually mind it. I loved having Caitlin on. I loved having Jacob on. I loved having Jenny on. Like, they were all amazing, but it's just good to have the big Josh boy to myself, okay?
It's time for our normal shenanigans. We can't really be us when there's other people, you know what I mean?
Okay, I did actually really love it that in the Discord we had some of our patrons being like, yeah, Vaughn was on his best behavior when Jenny was on it. I was like, I honestly didn't even think about it that way. Like, I really didn't. I was just kind of like doing things normally. I guess I just didn't bring up as much.
Yeah.
Like, there was actually something that I was going to bring up about my wife, but I just forgot. And it was really weird. And I might actually talk about it on this episode, but yeah, it was just, I just wanted everybody to know I wasn't doing it on purpose.
Because normally we talk about some bullshit that's going on in our lives, but it's like, why are we going to just start doing that when we're like, oh, we got a guest, and then immediately go into like, so me and my wife were talking about, like, who cares? Like, that guest is like going to just be sitting there like, what the fuck am I here for, you know?
Exactly. It's kind of, like, it would be kind of weird. I mean, I guess, like, unless it's like kind of an open-ended thing that everyone can understand, like, it kind of makes sense. But okay, so here's what happened.
All right, let's go.
I'm 100% sure that my wife doesn't want me to talk about this, but I find it so funny.
You gotta stop doing this. You gotta stop doing this, man. Did I tell you? I don't know if I said it on an actual episode, but I think I told you off an episode when I was like telling my wife about the stories that you tell, and she just got so she's like, you better never tell a story like that about me. And I was like, I would never. Vaughn's just crazy.
Yeah, I'm just like way too open. Like in my sociology class, we had to do this assignment where it's like there were a bunch of lists. Like if you were basically coming to the United States from like just basically like a foreign country, just anywhere outside of the United States, obviously. If you were coming to the United States, some things that you would need to know because like possibly it's like a culture shock, and one of them was that Americans tend to overshare about their lives, and I was like, dude, this is me to a fucking T. It's so funny. And I loved how many of like I have, like, it's an online class, but several, like, we have to do discussion boards where they, like, post about it, and then we have to, like, talk about it. And I loved how many of the other people in my class were like, oh, my God, yeah, I know somebody who overshares, and all sorts of stuff. And I was like, the only person who's like, that's me.
That is me.
I do that. I was like, that's me to a T. I overshare to the 10th degree or the nth degree. I honestly don't even know what the saying is at this point.
The nth.
Like, I feel like it's, I'm going to go with the nth degree because it reminds me of Ents and Lord of the Rings. And I feel like that saying was easily meant to be about, tree herders. People.
Clearly.
Tree peeps. Yeah, exactly. So what happened is,
right.
last week, I think while I was on my stream on Sunday, my wife, like, she came in. So if you watch the stream, there was a point in time where my wife came in and I, like, briefly spoke to her, and I was just like, what's up? Like, did you need something? And she's like, are you on video? And I was like, yeah, it's on video. And then she walked away, and I was like, oh crap, did she really need something? Luckily it was at the end of my stream. So I then go out and I was like, hey, are you okay? Did you need anything? And she's like, well, I wanted to tell you something, but I wasn't sure because she asked me if like I knew the people that were on my stream, and I was like, I mean, technically, in a sense, I know them. Like,
Right.
I know Chris. I know I know several of these people. Like, Captain's been here several times. Darth has been here several times. Like, it's kind of like a little community over there. And she was like, but you don't actually know them. Like, if it was just Josh and Chris, like, you don't do a podcast with them, I would have told you. But essentially what happened is that while I was doing my stream, she was like, we have 2 cats. So she was cleaning out one of the cat boxes. And I forget how exactly this happened, but she did something to the point where, like, I think she accidentally, like, scooped litter and a piece hit her eye. And she was, like, so deathly afraid that she was going to get some form of, like, feline pink eye.
Oh
Like,
my God. That is
she
some...
was so afraid about it to the point where she was, like, almost crying. And I was like, it's not, you're fine.
That is some aggressive scooping.
I know.
It was really hunting for treasure.
I can't remember exactly how it happened, but it was just such a weird thing for her to be like, yeah, I didn't want other people to know about it. Kind of a thing. And I was like, it's not even a weird thing.
We talked about this right before the episode. I am so afraid of anything that has to deal with eyes, so I'm right there with her. Anything in or around my eyes, it freaks me the hell out. Like, anytime you see those, like, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's videos out there where they'll have people, like, it's like eye surgery or things like that, where it's like coming so close to the eye, and just like watching that kind of stuff, I'm just like,
I mean, like, yeah, that shit freaks me out too. Like, when they do, like, they take samples of your eye fluid, so they'll stick a needle in your eye, and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it's so crazy to me. It's why, so I'm very happy that I have eyes that do not need glasses. And for the people that do and who are like, I think I might get LASIK, I'm always like, you're a fucking champion. Because if, like, I guess if I had the predicament, maybe I'd feel differently. But, like, I feel like if I woke up tomorrow and I needed glasses, there's no way I'd be like, let's just fucking jam some lasers in my eyeballs and fix this shit. Like, there's no fucking going back. I don't care.
I really adore the fact that you're just like, yeah, not a fan of needles in the eye. Don't like scalpels. Not even a beam of light can touch my fucking eye.
I don't want nothing in there. You stay the fuck out of my eyes. The only thing that needs to be in those sockets are my eyes. Nothing else.
You're like, honestly, borderline, just the fact that, like, rays of light are the reason that I can see right now is, like, as much as I can deal with. Everything else, like, if, you know, like, I would love for you to get some sort of, like, ESP, like, extrasensory perception, but it had something to do with your eyes, or, like, you were like, synesthetic. Do you know what synesthesia is?
No.
It's essentially where, like, I believe some of the wires in your brain get crossed to the point where your senses interact in a way that you wouldn't before. So people will, like, they will taste color and stuff like that. Like, they'll smell colors and stuff. It's like things that you could only normally see, they will sense in different ways, or vice versa, kind of a thing.
That's fucking cool.
And
I mean,
I would love for
know.
you to just, like, I mean, I feel like it's something at birth, but
right.
I would love for you to just eventually, like, get some form of synesthesia, and you, like, start seeing smells, and you're like, it's too much, and you just, like, start freaking out. You're like, there's too much going on.
The cognitive overload. Yeah.
Too many light rays hitting my eyeballs.
Too many rays. That's too much for me, man. I'm sticking with where my eyes are at. I'm good with them.
Too much for the big boy. I get it. It's cool, dude. It's cool. But speaking of too much, that makes no sense. This week, we've got some housekeeping that I got to throw down. Of course, we have our developer interview going up on Wednesday, so that's one day after for patrons, 2 days before for plebes. Also, somebody said that I was on my best behavior because I didn't say plebes. I did say it. It was just later in the episode.
Yeah, fucking plebes.
But got the plebes in there. So Chris Gween, I believe, the Adventures of Chris developer interview going up on Wednesday. Of course, please check out all of our developer interviews. They're awesome. Last week's was Yzma, the developer behind Dedius. So please check them out every Wednesday. They go live on the standard IndiePod feed. Of course, head over to Teespring the IndiePod store on Teespring, to get some t-shirts and stickers, soon to be new merchandise. We're basically just waiting until we have enough money to pay somebody to make something cool. That's what's happening right now. Please check out our YouTube channel over just IndiePod on YouTube. I possibly will change that eventually because I have some plans for a website that I'm creating and some other stuff. So it's possible that will change, but I will let everybody know when it does.
Every year we rebrand.
Yeah. It's gonna rebrand again.
What should we be called this time? What should we call it? What's our new name?
I don't know. Apparently, there was one name that was like, what was it? It was, with the amount of questions every week, you should just change the name of the podcast to Question Pod with a side dose of indie games.
That's a good one. That's a good one. We could also just rebrand to Indie Boys.
I mean, we could. Like, there are so many different areas that we could go into,
but if it's not a BOI, boys, I don't want to be a part of it.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, it's got to be BOI. BOIS. Like, people need to get on the train. That's how it's meant to be spelled.
It is.
It just checks out. Please leave us reviews on any sort of podcasting, listening, whatever platform you consume media on. If you can give reviews, please do so.
Plebes do so.
Plebes do so. I mean, there's more plebes than there are patrons, so please, plebes, do so. The patrons already have because they love us. They're amazing, and I give them big kisses for it. But the plebes, not many have, and we need to get more. So please do so. And lastly, speaking of patrons, thank you so much to our amazing patrons: Will C, Mixamatosis, aka Mix, Zach Durham, Chase Hopkins, Philip Renshaw, the Wombat Emperor of Australia, Chris Penwell, always drinking tea, it actually kind of bothers me, Josh Nichols, Active Josh over there, and Sam Fillion from Canada. Thank you all so much for being patrons. You're all absolutely amazing, and I'll kiss you on the mouth one day. But before that ever happens, we've got to talk about some indie games that we are playing. Big Josh Boy, you are playing the Loop Hero demo by 4 Quarters. Yeah. So tell me about Loop Hero.
So the first two things that I'm going to talk about today are part of the Steam Festival, that games demo festival that happened a little bit ago. I just wanted to shout them out. I tried a couple of others, but I think these are the ones that stuck with me, that I'm like, well, first off, Loop Hero, definitely have to get this. This is
really, because I remember when we talked about the Devolver Direct, we were both just like, what
is it, right? Yeah. So the demo makes it a lot easier, obviously, because you're playing it.
No way.
But I know, right? Turns out if you do it,
it's crazy.
You'll start to get what it's all about. Although that's not always true. But with this one, it is. So Loop Hero is... It is kind of weird, because there was that element where you were like, oh, there's a card system to it. It's not really important at all. So
sure,
it's really not. I
try to downplay the cards. We see your game, Big Josh.
I know, Philip, start fucking drinking. So the way it works is basically you're showing up in this world where it's like complete darkness, and you're like, what has happened? I can't remember anything. You're losing all your memory. But there's this evil, like this kind of Grim Reaper looking character who shows up and is basically destroying the world and turning basically everything you know into this very dark, secluded area. And
what a dick.
I know, what a dick. And the way the gameplay works, the general loop, is that there's a small, like, square area that you are constantly walking through, and you're just going around and around and around, and you're really not controlling anything per se. But as you're going through that loop, there's enemies that spawn at the start of each day. And so there's like a timer that while you're walking, day is constantly progressing, and so you'll go day 1, day 2, day 3, whatever it is. And so each day more enemies spawn, and as you're walking through, each time you run into one of those monsters, you'll fight them. And the way that the fighting works is it's kind of like an auto chess. It just like goes back and forth where you attack, they attack based on certain stats that you have. And so the way
sounds like an idle game.
Yeah, very much so. It's very like idle, but at the same time you're doing stuff. It's basically you kill an enemy and you'll get items, whether that be equipment or those cards that we just talked about. And so the cards are just land spaces, meaning it'll be like a mountain, and you'll play a mountain in a little area on that board, and the mountains represent, if you have a mountain, you'll get 5 extra health. If you add another mountain right next to that mountain, it'll give you 5 and 5 additionally for every mountain it's next to. So as you're building these things around there, you'll build like a forest, a grove, these different types of lanterns and things like that. And each of them have different abilities that will either make you run faster while you're on the land, will have enemies spawn because they're there. Each time you're going through those areas, you're collecting resources and you're killing those monsters. And it's constantly looping and looping and looping until eventually you get to the final boss for that area. And so once you get there, you fight that boss. And then I didn't beat the boss, and I played it through twice and I really enjoyed it, but I put it down because I was like, there's no way anything's going to progress in this from the demo to, or at least I didn't think so. So I put it down because I was like, I don't want to put more time into this because I already know I'm into it. But basically when you fail, or when, you finish that, you go back and you go to this camp where there are survivors, and you're building out the camp with those resources that you've collected based on that loop battle or so. Each time you go, I guess you would call it a run in a roguelike sense. And each time you go through that run and then come back, you're able to use those resources to build up your camp and have things that you can carry into the game later, like things like a starting equipment or different perks that you can play into. So there's kind of that very much roguelite element of it being something where you have like small forms of progression, but a lot of it, every time you start the run, you completely wipe all of your equipment away, you wipe all of the things that you've put on the map, and it's a totally different setup. So the cards, really, the only useful part about the cards is putting those in your deck, so to speak. You have like 12 available, or at least you did in the demo. Those are just going to be the things that you get that you can play on the map. So like different enemies that you might face or that you want to face. So like I took out spiders from the deck because I was like, I fucking hate these spiders. They keep killing me. I don't want to deal with them. So I just took them away, and I was like, I'm not picking these cards up. And so that's all it was from a card perspective. And then after that, you every so often get them randomly like drawn out to you, and you get to play that on the the map. The demo was super good. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with it. It was to the point where I played it a couple of times and like knew that this is for me. So I just put it down because I didn't want to play more time of it that I would just lose for going into the actual game. But I'm excited for when it comes out.
This looks really cool. I can say with 100% certainty that first trailer did not do this game justice.
This game looks
so much cooler.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, and even explaining it, I feel like it's hard to explain, right? I kind of stumbled upon with my explanation, as I think it's kind of hard to get without playing it or without seeing like someone go through that full loop. But like it is very much an idle type of game. Like this is a good podcast type game, right? You're watching the character go through. When something happens at the end of a fight, you then place some mountains and enemy locations. You put on different equipment. Then you go back and you do your resources. But a lot of it is you just kind of like watching it happen. But it's still like, I still enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I'm looking forward to it. That's all I really have.
Honestly, this fucking pixel art is blowing me away. This shit looks so good. I'm almost sold on this freaking game. This game looks dope. It's coming out March 4th, 2021. This looks pretty cool. I'm gonna have to try out the demo to see if I enjoy it.
I think you'd like it.
I do really like the idea of, like, one, that it's not as, like, labor intensive. I think that's kind of nice that it is kind of like an idle game. I think that's cool.
Right.
Because who doesn't love an idle game? That kind of makes me wonder if it's eventually going to come to smartphones. Like, I would assume so, because it would just...
I think that it would be very well suited for a mobile game. Like, because a lot of this, the only thing that would kind of suck is you have to be like the grid that you're putting some of those cards down onto is pretty small. Like it's very, very tiny pixels as far as like the consideration of the entire map. So I think that would get a little tough, but like, it's honestly not the worst thing in the world if you put it in the wrong place. Like the placement of it's such a large map that it really doesn't matter as much. And so I think it would still work. But like, yeah, like as far as like mechanically or intensive, as far as, how much you have to actually interact with the game, this could definitely work on a mobile phone.
Yeah, and I'm watching like the kind of like live preview on Steam, and just watching the moment-to-moment gameplay, how like every time you defeat a monster, you essentially get like a card which is meant to like basically just fill out the environment, and you just like place it there and then continue on your loop, like continue going. I think that's really, really cool. This game looks honestly like really awesome. I'm so glad that we're getting more of it. Plus, like the conversation overlays for characters are just fucking like their choice. They looking dope. Okay, like this game looks beautiful. I mean, it looks. Don't get me wrong. The kind of like map view, it looks a little rough, but it seems to be meant to. Like it's not meant to be like highly detailed or anything.
No.
It's meant to look a little bit rough, but once they get a little bit closer in like battles, it looks a little bit better. It's more of like a 16-bit aesthetic. And then when it comes to like the conversation overlays, they're essentially like, I would say this is just me not understanding the terminology, but I would say like 32-bit or higher. Like they look fucking amazing. They look fantastic. So I personally, just looking at this shit, I think it looks awesome. I'm going to have to check out this demo. I might have to buy the game. It is currently like until March 11th, you can pre-purchase it and get 15% off or whatever. So you can actually get it for $12.74 instead of $14.99. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it definitely looks like a game that could be well suited for like at least a larger screen smartphone kind of a deal.
Yep.
But Josh, you were also playing Pecaminosa by Serial Games. So tell me about this extremely hard to say game.
Yeah, Pecaminosa is a pixel noir game that I saw it the other day through Twitter, and I thought it looked really cool, and I just wanted to check it out. I think it's one that isn't as much as Loop Hero is to like my style per se, but I like the aesthetic of it, the noir game, but it's very much looks like an older like SNES game based on the pixel art for it, which I really enjoy. And it is one of those things where it's with a lot of pixel noir games, or not pixel, but like noir games, that detective style. Most of the games usually revolve around it being like a detective type of thing, right? Like that's just the style that they associate with. This one isn't as much. It's more of like an RPG action type game, which I thought was interesting. So you're putting points into your character and leveling up based on different things, like the range that your gun can shoot, or things just like about you personally and how you interact with the world and communicate with the different characters. In this, it was very heavily focused on the actual attacking and like traversing through the world, which I thought was interesting. It was more or less you dashing and having guns. Like those are the main like abilities in this game, which I thought was a little bit different, because like I said, the noir type games, they're usually a bit more slower paced, but this has a faster one to it. As far as the dialogue and the actual like writing to it, I wasn't as like, it didn't pull me in as much, but I thought it was a quirky little fun game that for people, if they like that kind of aesthetic but want a more fast-paced game, this might be something for them to consider. I would check out the demo. I'm not going to talk too much more about that other than it was fun.
Yeah, I think the idea, like, we see so many basically like noir games come out, but they're
tickling.
Typically all about like detection and the art of deduction kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And you being like a detective and everything. Whereas this one is a little bit more action oriented as far as I'm seeing, which I think is really cool, because it's not something that a lot of them get into. They're typically like kind of just shoved into the adventure game category, where it's just like, oh yeah, you kind of like piece everything together. Yep. Very Telltale or Wolf Among Us, versus this is like very in it. You actually like go through fights and stuff. I think it looks really cool, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I like that the whole idea of this being an action RPG instead, because like personally I'm not like a big fan of adventure games. Yeah. So I think that's really cool. I like the action RPG aesthetic. I like the like isometric gameplay. Like I think that's kind of cool. So
yeah. And the boss fights were pretty good. Like the ones that were showcased in the demo, I thought they had promise. It wasn't like the hardest thing in the world, but I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like I like the way that they're pushing you to use the dash mechanics. They're like being more clever with, not just, hey, shoot a guy with bullets. Like he had shields that you had to wait for certain patterns and things like that. So I was like, okay, cool. There is, that element of variety in this game.
Yeah, and the last game that you have been playing is For the King, specifically the Lost Civilization DLC by Iron Oak Games. Tell me about this and why people should hop in to For the King.
Yeah. So for anyone who is a longtime listener, you'd probably know that For the King is a favorite game of mine. I definitely enjoy it a lot. It's great if you have two other people who want to play games with you, or if you just want to play it alone, you can. But I think it's pretty good if you have one person for each character.
Full party.
Yeah, like a full party. Well, because you could play each one of those characters yourself, but it's just better when you have, a full group. But we got into the DLC because For the King had been something that we'd played for a long time and then kind of fell off because we had played all the different game modes. And so with this one, the new, I'm grabbing some of the stuff just so I can read it off. But the new Lost Civilization Adventure Pack comes with this new game mode called the Lost Jungle Falls Realm. And it's basically this more foresty area, and there's these tribes folk, and there's this talk about the alignment of the stars and kind of this impending doom that's coming to the town that you're trying to save them from. So with it comes two new playable characters. So I thought it was really cool because they had one called the Astronomer, which makes sense with this, but they have this really dope passive that it's very rare that it happens, but it's called like Black Hole, and it's just you attacking someone will randomly throw them into a black hole rather than actually fighting them, and it gives you it gives you this really cool item afterwards that you get to use. It's a usable item that gives you like 3 shield for your whole party, which is super useful. And then there's another one who I haven't seen yet called the Gladiator. So I want to see what they're all about. But with that, they also have arena battles, which is their new kind of like gimmick, which is going into a specific section and having like back-to-back battles over and over. New weapons, which there's a bunch of different weapons that have been shown. I saw that. I don't know if they were in here before, but now I'm seeing maracas, which I think is hilarious. I'm like, what the hell? But there's also just a ton of new enemies, a ton of new loot and different things that you can collect. And it's just fun getting back into it. Like a good portion of it is still the same, and it's still like the same baseline mechanics. But like if you haven't tried For the King, I would recommend it wholeheartedly. If you have played For the King and you enjoyed it, I'd say pick up the DLC. It's only like $4. I think it's on discount right now. I don't know if they're getting rid of that soon, because it's usually that
they have it's on the Lunar New Year sale for Steam, so which ends technically the day after this goes live, but I don't know if the specific DLC stuff is actually going to.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
Special promotion For the King Lost Civilization Adventure Pack offer ends February 24th.
Oh, okay, so you got time.
Yeah. So it's 20% off right now until February 24th.
Yeah, so my friends and I picked that up. I'd recommend it. I've been having fun with it. I haven't completed all the content in there, but I spent a couple hours with 2 buddies of mine, and it is definitely worth it. I don't know. Plus, there's so much content in the For the King game already that it was one of those things where, sometimes when you play a game so much and it had just been a while and you're like, all right, I'll just toss the developers a couple more bucks kind of a thing. It really was more of that for this. Like, even if it wasn't that much, but like I'm still enjoying the new realm or the new game mode. I definitely am enjoying the new character. I want to try out the Gladiator, see what he's all about. I think it's a good time.
So I do have to ask, like, do you know if, like, because I don't have For the King on Steam, and I believe you do.
Yep, I do.
Do you know if me having it on the Epic Game Store, like, can I play with you, or do I have to own it on Steam? That's always been something that kind of bothered me, because I know they use, like, different servers and stuff.
I believe, I have to double check, but I believe that I've played with my friend who had it on Game Pass, and we were totally fine playing together. But I'll have to double check and make sure. I have to ask my buddy and see if he actually bought the game on Steam, which I don't think he did, but I've played with him. So let me check.
I mean, we could always try, because I have it on the Epic Game Store and you have it on Steam. So we could see if it works.
That's true, yeah.
But, of course, last week, For the King was actually free on the Epic Game Store, so this should be some sort of like an endorsement. If you picked it up, try it out, play it, shout it out on Twitter or whatever, tell your friends about it if you like it. The game looks cool, honestly. I think the idea of like each having a different class and everything looks really, really cool. I love the art style to it. Yeah. I think that looks just so awesome. Like, it's very interesting. I actually do want to hop into For the King, especially like since I just have it for free now. That's like why not kind of a thing.
I mean, you had it for free when it's on Game Pass too. So
yeah, I was gonna say, well, I actually had it for free even before that. Like, it was free on the Epic Game Store before, and I picked it up. And I didn't realize it until I went to the Epic Game Store to try to pick it up last week that I actually already had it.
You're like, oh, okay. I'm just not playing the games I have. Got it.
Exactly. I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, all right, that's awesome. So, last week, you and Jenny were talking about how awesome Children of Morta is. And I was like, you know what? I did not give this game enough of a chance when it first came out. I thought it was a little bit slow. Me personally, I'm not good at games, so I just thought it was difficult. Feel free to drink, Phil. And I just, I wasn't into it at the time. And then you guys talked it up with, like, Hades coming out and everything, and me, you know, trying to be better at video games. I was like, you know what? I'm going to hop in. I'm going to play some Children of Morta because it is on Xbox Game Pass. So I was like, easy way to play. It's right on there. Let's hop in. And boy, is this game fucking sweet, dude. I love this game. It's so good. Yes. It's like every chance I get, like every extra minute I've had, I've been like, I wonder if I can get a run in. Like, let's see what happens. Like, I want to pop through this because the Bergsons are just such a cool family. Honestly, like, I'm doing it mostly for the story. I don't like. I don't mind the gameplay. I don't mind the like roguelite elements. I think it's all really cool. There are some things that I find somewhat annoying, like dungeon fatigue. I'm like, can you eat my dick? I'm so like, I basically. Okay, so here's the thing that I don't like. So essentially, the way, if you have not played this game, which you absolutely should because it's on Xbox Game Pass PC, check it out. It's sweet. It's also on sale right now over on Steam, but I don't know how long for, so that's just me talking out my ass. But essentially, you are part of this warrior family who's trying to, like, basically wipe the corruption off of the face of the earth. Like, it's starting to really seep into everything, and you're just trying to fight back against the corruption. Just kind of your typical fantasy storyline. But you are a family who specializes essentially in this kind of a thing. So you delve into these different dungeons to try to get to these different gods, to try to figure out what exactly is happening with the darkness or the corruption is what it's called, and how to stop it, like why it exists and how to stop it. And as you go through, like every time you hop into a dungeon, you get a choice between different family members to choose from, and you unlock more as you continue to go. So initially all you have is the father and the daughter. The father is more of a tanky character. He has a sword and a shield, and his abilities are that like he can swing his sword to do damage, he can block with his shield, and he can summon like basically like pseudo spell that rains different swords down on enemies. And then there's the daughter, who I actually play as the majority of the time, and she's an archer who like has a limited amount of arrows that she can shoot while she's walking. Technically it's like a stamina bar that she can shoot to keep you from just running around and like kiting people and shooting them, because it would make it just too easy. You eventually do run out of stamina. She also has like a volley ability where you can shoot an arrow and it does like AoE damage, and later on you gain additional abilities. Plus there are like other characters, like your son Mark. He's like a martial arts, like more of a monk character. There is like, I believe his name is Kevin, your other son, who's like more of a rogue. He's a lot faster. I believe I have his name written down. Probably not. Whatever.
That's okay.
But
Kevin it is.
Yeah, each one of the Bergsons has a different play style to make you play in a different way, essentially. Right. Like you can choose whichever one you want, but me particularly, I'm a ranged combat kind of a person, not just in roguelites or in any of that. It's just kind of my preferred DPS style. So I was like, you know what? I'm going ranged. I play as the daughter. I like her. She's like level, I think like 8 for me right now because each has their own individual levels and they have skill points and skills that you can put things into to essentially make the game a little bit easier. That's one of the things I love about Children of Morta so much is there is this constant sense of progression to make things a little bit easier, not just in leveling up your character, but the gold that you get inside the dungeon, you can then use to, I'm going to use quotes, upgrade your equipment. You don't literally do that. You essentially just like give your character more health by upgrading their armor or upgrading their weapons, which gives you more damage kind of a thing, or you make their movement speed faster. And then you can also invest in like kind of perks that allow you to gain more money or allow like different buffs to last longer kind of a deal. So allow runes to last longer kind of a deal. It's like there's a lot to it that makes the game a little bit easier that I really enjoy from this because I like if I had to just run through, I couldn't do it. That's why I also love that the game is separated into sections where it's like, okay, there's 2 levels on the section. You just have to get through the 2 levels and then the boss. And then after you beat that boss, you go to the next section. There's 3 levels. You get through those 3 levels, you beat the boss, you go to the next one. 3 levels, beat the boss. It's super easy. I don't have to go through 5 levels and 2 bosses to get to the last area. Like, I like that a lot. That's something that, like, Hades always really annoyed me about because I always got to Elysium and then got my dick kicked in. Yeah. And I was like, I fucking hate this. Like, I'm so sick of it, dude. I hated the journey of getting there. It was always just so annoying. So I personally, I love that Children of Morta separates it into sections. I think that's awesome. And constantly, as I beat sections, it forces you back to the main area where there is more story, more lore about the Bergsons and about their world that they live in. It's awesome. I love this game. I'm having so much fun. But this is where dungeon fatigue comes in, where they have 65 million fucking melee characters, but they only have 2 ranged characters, one of which I have yet to unlock. I literally just unlocked her. Maybe there's a 3rd ranged character? I don't know. That person is blacked out for me currently. I have no idea. But essentially, if you play in the dungeons too much with one character, their overall health begins to deplete because you have dungeon fatigue. And there's a percentage, so then you have to play with other characters in the dungeon to, like, as you go through, their dungeon fatigue will slowly go down, and then you can play as the character you actually give a shit about. So
wow, I didn't even know that. That's interesting. I actually
it's
really
fucking annoying. Dude.
I disagree. I think that's great. I think that's great because
me off.
I know, but the benefit of that is like you want to level up all of those characters simultaneously because you get those outside perks of like the father being stronger. You get certain perks that equate to all of the family members.
I understand why they would want to like force you into playing each character because they do have like the perks that basically like as you level up one character, each tier of their level tree actually gives an overall benefit to the family as a whole. I think that's really cool. But when there's only 2 fucking ranged characters and 65 million melee ones, I'm like, are you shitting me? Can I fucking not? Like, if they just offered more of like a gameplay variety, I would be cool with it. But instead, it's just like, these guys hit things up close. These guys don't. And it's like only 2 people who don't. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Can I not? Like, I wouldn't have any problem if Mark was like a ranged character, kind of a deal. But like, because of the dungeon fatigue, I know for a fact that I will have to resort to these characters. I can't just do ranged, which kind of sucks, but it is getting me a little bit better, like, at using different characters. Like, I actually beat the first area. So I went through the first 2 areas, like, because there's, I don't know if there's 3 in everyone, but in the first little, like, actual dungeon leading up to the real boss, the basically, like, god of beasts, you go through one area that's like these caves with a bunch of spiders. I beat that with the daughter. She's the archer. And then there is the cave with, there's another section of caves that's meant to be like housed with goblins. So I beat that with the daughter. And then I got to the last part, and that's when it's like, now there's dungeon fatigue. Now you have less health. And I was like, fuck. So I decided to play as, like, I started to level up the dad, and I was like, okay, I like playing tanky characters, but he was a little bit harder to deal with because, like, each one has their own quirks. I actually, like, I enjoy Mark and the dad a little bit more. Kevin's a little bit more annoying to deal with because his abilities are all about speed and, like, increasing your damage based on the speed at which you do things, and you're just like, it's, like, really, really quick. So I think the gameplay variety is cool, but I eventually, like, I actually beat the last boss of that area using Mark because I had the battlefield fatigue on the other character. So it's like, okay, that kind of checks out. The weirdest part about that, though, is that I felt like that boss was actually the easiest of the three. I was like, the spider boss, so fucking annoying. Because it just summons, like, spiders over and over again and then traps you so you can't run away from them with spider webs. The second boss are these two goblin brothers that just beat the shit out of you relentlessly. And so I beat that with the archer as well. And then, like, the last boss of this area is this golem, and it's so easy to kill. Like, it's honestly, I had an easy time. It was my first try, and I beat it. And I was like, this boss is not hard. Damn. Like, it was kind of like a letdown having to go through the Spider Queen and then the two Goblin Brothers to then get to the Golem. And they're, like, talking up the Golem this whole time. They're like, yeah, the mountain god created this for the god of beasts. And I was like, oh, shit, this is going to be dope. And I was like, this thing's a bitch. It looks like a fucking... It looks like a slot machine, but more stony. And then it just, like, it shoots some stuff at you. And I was like, bro, I got 2 dodges and I don't even have to use my second because it takes so long for you to shoot shit at me the second time. Like, it just revamps my first dodge. It's like, it was so easy, but I so far really loving the game. I'm going to play some more. I think it's a lot of fun. I personally, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Hades may be a thirst trap, but I think Children of Morta is better. Like,
Damn.
I'm sorry. Like, I think Hades is really awesome, but I just love the way that Children of Morta approaches the roguelite. And it's like, okay, we understand that it might be really annoying to run through all these old sections over and over again. Plus, there's, like, constantly different quests that you do to then get, like, new Bergsons, or you get the Wolf Cub, or any of these other things. Like, it's really cool, and it continues to flesh out the story and the lore of this world. Like, obviously, Hades did it as well, but I really love it. I would say I like the characters themselves much more in Hades. Yeah. But I like the overall, like, story and roguelite structure of Children of Morta more. But that's also because I have yet to beat Hades, so I don't know what actually the story of, like, Persephone is and what's up with Zagreus's, like, what's up with Zagreus's mother and Nyx and Hades. Like, I don't know all of that, so It's very possible that it has a far greater story than Children of Morta will end up having, because currently it's just, like, kind of boilerplate, like, good versus evil, but I'm enjoying it. I think it's pretty awesome. Yeah. I'm liking it. I often don't delve into roguelites, but I'm glad that you and Jenny were like, it's fucking good. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it, dude. I want to play a game. I'll play some Children of Morta, and it's sweet.
Maybe I'll have to go back into it, because I never officially beat that game. So maybe I'll jump back into it as well. Really? Yeah, I never.
Big Josh
I never
boy,
went
the
fully
king
through
of roguelites, ain't beat Children of Morta. That's pretty crazy.
I know. I don't.
But you have beat Hades like 8 times. What's that all about?
Well, I beat it 10 times. You need to beat it 10 times to get the actual ending.
That's fucking horseshit, dude.
I beat it.
That would be so annoying. I would hate that so much. So, yeah, Children of Morta, great game by Dead Mage. Please check it out. It's over on Xbox Game Pass PC. But let's talk about some of our news stories. Our first news story over on IGN, written by Matt T.M. Kim, is Terraria devs Google boycott includes future games but not existing ones. The developers of Terraria, Relogic, have confirmed that alongside Terraria for Stadia, any further games from the company will also skip Google platforms. However, existing Android and Google Play versions of Terraria will not be affected. Relogic has also given IGN deeper insight into its frustrations with Google as a company. Earlier today, Terraria co-creator Andrew Spinks shared their ordeal of losing all access to their Google accounts, including Gmail, Google Play, Google Drive, and more. Attempts to reinstate these accounts were apparently unsuccessful, and Spinks publicly announces Relogic's relationship with Google is severed and an unannounced version of Terraria for Stadia is canceled. That part I don't care about because it doesn't actually say anything. So, all right. This is a statement from, I believe, Spinks specifically, or just Relogic in general. It says, punishing existing customers who paid for our game on these platforms is not what we're about, Relogic says. To be clear, there should be no impact whatsoever to Terraria on Google platforms, both existing/purchase games as well as ongoing store availability. Spinks' disabled Google account included legacy connections to Relogic, such as access to the developer's YouTube channel, important documents on Google Drive, and more, all of which have been severed as a result of their account loss. Relogic tells IGN that the problems actually began mid to late January after Spinks' account received a notice from YouTube that claimed their channel violated the terms of service. Relogic says it had not updated its YouTube channel in 3 months at the time of the notice, and nobody on team could find anything strange. They claim that follow-ups from Google about this matter didn't indicate that this was a serious problem. The initial correspondence from YouTube on this matter was clear that this was not a major issue, according to Relogic, and Relogic claimed that they were later told by YouTube that their channel is clean and has no issues. However, Relogic says Spinks lost access to their entire account 3 days later, and attempts to appeal through public and private channels have not yielded any results. Many avenues were attempted with Google in private to resolve this matter, well beyond what people may have observed on Twitter. A few weeks ago, information has been sparse and difficult to obtain, even with us being a long-standing partner, Relogic says in an email. IGN reached out to Google about their claims, but yeah, they haven't heard back about it by the time this was published. Meanwhile, Relogic says the decision to pull away from Google was not taken lightly and hopes to shine a spotlight on the issue of what happens when Google bans users, but the developers also thanked those with Google that did their best to avoid to no avail. Perhaps a meaningful change on the customer service front will take place within Google as a result, says Relogic. It sorely needed. Essentially, moving forward, the developers of Terraria not only will they're not bringing Terraria to Stadia, but any games that they develop in the future will not come to any Google platforms, including Google Play. But if you already own Terraria on Google Play, you can of course still play it, and it will exist on those devices in perpetuity, seemingly. Yeah. So we are in perpetuity, so we don't really have to worry about it. So how do you feel about this situation, Josh?
Well, on the one hand, Google's a pretty big company that probably doesn't this is going to sound bad, but they don't really care in the grand scheme of things because they don't probably know who Relogic is. They probably the overarching who is Google probably isn't even aware of this being a big thing until possibly now. And even with this coming as an IGN article and kind of blowing up on the internet, Google still might not care or might not have noticed this because they're a big company and it's hard. And I know this situation sucks, but I don't know. I'd love to know why. If there's maybe there is a real reason or maybe there isn't, and this is just a screw up. But stuff gets through the cracks, unfortunately. This really reminds me of. So I had this is a weird example, but I have AT&T as my internet provider. And so for the longest time, ever since I moved and I took my router with me. And the people, like the way AT&T does moves is just stupid. They don't know it. They're just like, oh, instead of considering it a move, we cancel it and then re-up your internet service again. And so it's like, from a back end perspective, it's a nightmare because I keep getting these calls every couple of months. They'll start and they'll be like, hi, you need to turn in your router. And it'll be like an automated message, and I'll be like, fuck. And so I have to call support like every 3 months and be like, hey, do I have to send my router to you? Like, I don't have another router. There's nothing for me to send to you. And they're like, oh no, you know what? You're fine, but we'll put it in your file. We'll change this number so that it doesn't do blah, blah, blah. And then the next week it'll do it, or the next month it'll do it again. And I have to keep calling these people. And like, this is exactly the same situation on a much lower scale, right? This is exactly like Google probably had some notification or some back-end service thing that was like, hey, they're in violation, and they called and someone was probably like, oh no, actually you're good, like don't worry about it, and they clicked a button, and then Google, like their back-end service, like clicked it on again, and they're like, no, it wasn't taken care of, and so it just like insta-killed itself. It's probably all this is. Like, as stupid as it sounds, like the bigger part about this is it's funny because with me, I can complain to AT&T and be like, what are you doing? And they're like, what are we gonna do? AT&T, like, and that's just how it is, right? Because like, I'm a customer, but like, they don't care about me because I'm just one customer. But this is like a person who's actually creating some kind of service for them in this space. So maybe, like, I'd love to hear what the next step of this is. Like, is Google's response to be like, oh, we're so sorry, like here's blah blah blah, this is what happened, like try to get back on their good side, or is Google just gonna like, all right, whatever?
Yeah,
because maybe they do, because like, I honestly, like with Stadia, like Google is known for just dipping from things that don't work out, and Stadia has not worked out. Like, and
I mean, they've already basically like scrapped the actual internal studio developing video games for Stadia. So it's like, do they give that much of a fuck about it at this point?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe, like, I think, like I said, is this even on their radar?
Yeah, I would be very curious as to like hear the explanation as to what happened here. Like being like, oh, you're in violation of the terms and service, and them saying nothing's wrong. There's a big leap in being in violation of terms and service. They don't just knock your account. They don't just like,
right.
They give you warnings. They give you like 3 basically.
Yeah.
So it just then like everything being taken away. That's just so crazy, and it sucks so much because it seems like they actually needed some of that stuff. Like they talk about how they lost some.
Yeah, what are those important documents?
Google Drives.
Yeah,
like important documents and stuff on Google Drives, and like they lost actual. They lost their YouTube channel, which definitely sucks. Like they can always build another one, but it's kind of like in that scenario, what kind of sucks is a lot of this stuff. You can't exactly go and use somebody else's shit. Like, they can't just not make another YouTube channel. Like, if they want to do video again, they essentially have to do it on YouTube. There are other platforms, but they're not good, and nobody uses them. Or, like, very few people use them. So, sadly, Google has, like, this kind of section of the market where they're just like, I mean, we can essentially fuck people over.
Yeah, it's very monopolized.
No other option. Yeah, like, that's just... They own the market, so they're like, good luck with that, dude. Like, you're not going to sell on our devices. That sucks for you. But I'm glad that Relogic is taking a stand, and they're just like, no, we're not going to deal with your fucking shit. Yeah. We're going to play the only card we really have because we played the customer's card, and you didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, you obviously didn't give a shit about it. So now they're like, we're going to hit you in your wallet because, let's be real, like, Terraria is a big game. People still play it. Like, it's a big deal. I mean, it's not, like, I imagine if fucking, like, Innersloth was like, we're taking Among Us off currently, at least.
Right.
Because, like, that's a thing. But, I mean, it's also, like, free on those devices, I'm fairly certain, so I don't know exactly. But that might have been a bad analogy. But, like, there are... It'll be interesting to see if, like you said, they actually give a shit, or they're just like, okay, no skin off my sack, whatever, or back, however you're supposed to say that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I hope moving forward, like I kind of hope even if this shit gets fixed, Relogic doesn't kind of like renege on this, and they're just like, you know what?
Skin off my sack thing. I can't. Google's official statement today: no skin off their sack. What?
That would be amazing. I would love that so much. But whether they give a shit, nobody knows. Speaking of not giving a shit. Actually, that's not necessarily true, but this news story is actually pretty funny.
A little bit.
Yeah, so over on Polygon, this is written by Charlie Hall, and it is Pillars of Eternity's Switch port won't be getting any better. Pillars of Eternity, Obsidian Entertainment's epic role-playing game, first released in 2015, won't be patched further on the Nintendo Switch. In fact, the publisher says that it can't be improved further due to the limitations of the hybrid console's design. The announcement was made on Tuesday on Twitter, so I'm just going to read directly from their announcement. For all those who dove into the world of Aora with Pillars of Eternity on Nintendo Switch, we want to thank you. All of the feedback that you have given has allowed us to continually make the game better as you can play it so you can play it wherever you go. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading per usual.
It's small on this one, so you got to blow that picture up, baby.
I'm just sucking.
It's okay.
So it has been a massive undertaking to get us to the point, to get up to this point. Fuck, dude.
Do you want me to do it? Let me do it.
Yeah, I'll let you.
Let me do this. All right, I got this. All right, don't worry.
Because I'm having some fucking issues today.
All right, I'll start back at all the feedback. So all the feedback that you have given has allowed us to continually make the game better so you can play it wherever you go. It has been a massive undertaking to get us to this point. We have unfortunately reached a limit on what we can do with our update to the game and have exhausted the options left us from the PC original in regards to the limitations of the hardware we are working with. We do understand that this will leave issues present that have been reported to us, such as the ranger pet not appearing, but at this time we're unable to patch the game further. We apologize for any inconvenience that this may cause and hope that you continue to enjoy building your story in Pillars of Eternity. Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I read that and the whole time I was thinking like, what if I fuck up?
I just get to shit on you
relentlessly. I was like, oh, don't do it.
Nope, you did a great job, Big Josh Boy. Great
Flawless,
job.
Baby.
So, how do you feel about this Pillars of Eternity scenario where it's like, they can't fix it?
No. Well, okay, so here's the thing. They can fix it, right? Like, they can fix it. Like, let's be honest. We've seen some crazy ports on the Switch. Like, there's no way. And I understand that it's not, apples to apples here with some of the games that come out versus what Pillars of Eternity is. I get that there's a lot of mechanics that go into these type of games, these CRPGs. Like, there's a lot of things in play, right?
Yeah, it's dense.
It's dense. It is
code, not in artwork, but in code.
Yeah,
because it does look at times kind of ugly.
And that's kind of where people get confused, right? But it's like, come on. This game's a chonky boy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. It's got them thickness.
It's got yeah. But they can do it. Like, there's no way they can't. Like, I know they can. The difference is we can't do it for a reasonable amount of effort that will pay off in dividends to what people are going to actually purchase, right? Like, this does not equate.
They have also already moved on to Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. So.
Yeah, like why would they put so much work if they're not going to get any real benefits? Like, it sucks, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that it is bad just from a consumer perspective. Like, you're basically dicking over your fans in a lot of ways, but at the same time, if that work is going to, if I was a dedicated fan, right? I think the way to think about this is fuck you for not finishing it kind of a thing. But also, if this means that they have more time to pour into the next one or their next game, that's kind of why you have to be okay, well, I guess it makes sense, right? I'd rather them not focus so much time and effort on this older game, although it's, you know, it is kind of crappy because we want that to be 100% or how it should be if it's on the Switch. But like at the same time, it's just not feasible from a business perspective, which sucks because it's really what ruins, you know, games a lot is the business side of things. But that's just the nature of it because people need money to live. So like, what are you going to do?
And also, like, I mean, you kind of have to wonder about, okay, so one thing, just to prove that, I mean, this is up in the air, depending on whether you believe the two are applicable, you can say, it's not apples to apples, they are two different types of games, but Divinity Original Sin 2, from what I understand, works well on the Nintendo Switch. It even has cross-save to the PC version of the game. Like, you can play it, you can move over your saves, and I would argue, having played both, that Divinity 2 is like a better looking game, and it probably has the same amount of chonkness as Pillars of Eternity. And like, I'm not saying Pillars of Eternity is ugly, by the way. I think it looks great. Like, it's a fantastic looking game. The character models, when you like get close to them, they do look bad. Like, let's be real. When you actually see the character model itself, it does not look good. But it is a very good game. Like, I think it's awesome. But you have to wonder, like you said, one, they can absolutely fix it. They definitely can. But the thing I want to say, and this is completely unsubstantiated, but you do kind of have to wonder, like, what Microsoft's involvement in this is, where they're just like, because they own Obsidian Entertainment, so they're just like, you know what? You're putting too much time and effort into something that currently is not making us a big amount of money. Yes, this is the entry into Pillars of Eternity, but also it's like, I doubt you actually have to play this game to play Pillars of Eternity 2. Like, a lot of people will not play Divinity Original Sin, but they'll hop into Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yeah.
Because it's just an entirely different game.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's very interesting. I personally would love to actually, to get any sort of an explanation as to what's really holding them back from this, because they say that it's like just... Yeah, the limitations of the platform, and it's just like, bro, you realize that people are pushing this platform to its peak. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, Breath of the Wild, big game. It is on the Nintendo Switch. It's beautiful. Like, it's obviously not apples to apples. Divinity Original Sin 2 on there works, as far as I know, pretty great. Like, there are, like, The Witcher 3 is on there, and I've heard it's a decent port. Crazy. Like, it's a good port. Yeah. So they do have bad Switch ports, but, like, saying that the limitations of the console itself are somehow keeping you from fixing your game, it absolutely seems like a lie.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think it's a lie per se, but I think the wording on it of saying that the hardware limitations are the reason is not quite the case. The hardware limitations are the reason for you not doing it, because the main reason is that you don't have the time to put into it, or you don't have the resources. Like, it's not that the hardware can't do it. It's that the hardware is making it so the work to get that done is a lot harder. But I really like the point you made about Xbox, because I think that's, or Microsoft, because that's definitely key here, I would think, is like, if I had just acquired a company and they were spending a good portion of their time working on something that really makes mean nothing, like from like a Microsoft perspective, I don't think that they would want them to do it for that long. And that's a great thing to say, but like, obviously they're not going to say that if that's the case, and Microsoft wouldn't want them to say that either. So like, I think this is the just, you know, we're not going to do it because we don't have time. It's just the answer.
Yeah, it's interesting. I enjoy it. That's mostly why I put this news story on here, because I was like, yes, Obsidian Entertainment, no longer independent, but whatever. Pillars of Eternity, the series, it was created in independence, but also it's just like, it's so interesting when a developer is just like, we're abandoning this.
Yeah.
We're done.
I mean, and
you're like, sorry.
The thing that really sucks about this is the bigger conversation around this is like, stop porting everything to Switch if it's not going to work. Right? Like, there should have been a lot more of feasibility testing before going into this, because like, this game works. Like, it's not like they're making this game and it doesn't work anywhere. It's like they made this game and then ported it, and then we're like, oh, there's so many things wrong. And I get that that's really hard, especially with games like this, because there's a lot that goes into these. But like, it's kind of like a, you know, if you're not willing to put in the time, like, don't port it.
Yeah. Yeah, it might make you some quick money, but please don't. Like, it's kind of like, will the quick money actually, like, will it make you feel better when people are shitting on you?
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the
thing. Because your game doesn't work?
Is like, is that money worth the hit to your reputation? And granted, I don't think this is going to really hit them that much. I don't think people will care to a crazy degree. I mean, the people who bought it on Switch will, obviously, but yeah. I mean,
what really sucks is, like, Obsidian has actually already seen kind of an, like, I guess, I imagine their Switch audience is not exactly very happy with them because The Outer Worlds came to
that was
the
really
Nintendo
bad.
Switch, and the port is very
really
bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't, from what I understand, they outsourced the port to somebody else.
Yep.
So it's like, it's not their bad, but the game is associated with them.
Oh, yeah,
So
of
even
course.
adding the caveat of, oh, somebody else did it, you're just like, but it's your game.
Yeah, like you're supposed to oversee that though. Like if they did it and it wasn't good, you shouldn't let it go out, kind of a thing. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that they should just stick with Xbox, which is probably what they're gonna do.
I guess keeping that in mind, it is possible that they're just like, in your point, them talking about the resources that they have, maybe they're like, you know what, Pillars of Eternity, not making us a whole lot of money on the Nintendo Switch, but we also have to fix this really fucked up port of The Outer Worlds. Let's put more time and effort into that because it's a newer game. It's a newer game and it's a little bit more accessible. I feel like CRPGs, not everyone are hopping into them.
That's definitely a wider
like
audience.
First-person shooter like RPGs, it's kind of a thing. So it sucks to suck, I guess.
Sucks to suck. Let's move on.
Yeah, over on GameSpot, this is written by Eddie Mukuk. They write, a Way Out dev, Joseph Fares, is unsure about Xbox Game Pass. How do you get paid?
That's a great question.
So excited to talk about this.
Great question.
Finally, somebody fucking asked the question. Game designer Joseph Fares, who led the development team at Hazelight on Brothers A Way Out and It Takes Two, isn't sold on the idea of subscription services like Xbox Game Pass. Speaking to Polygon, Fares said he's scared about the Netflix system, in quotes, in the context of games because he isn't sure how one very important piece comes together. How do developers get paid? I'm not sure if the Netflix system will work with games. I'm not sure how that's going to work in the long term. The only thing that scares me a little bit, is that if you have a system where do you get paid? I'm not sure, he says. Which, yeah, a system where do you get paid? Yeah, it's how do you get paid? I'm not sure.
I was like,
wait, what? Fares offered up a potential business model structure for a subscription service where a developer gets paid based on the amount of time someone spends playing it, but that doesn't work out well for developers who make shorter games in the end. Fares said he likes the idea of a system like Game Pass that has the potential to get people to play more games than ever, and Microsoft's data says that that is the case, but if it comes at the expense of the developer, then that's a problem. Let's say you have a Netflix model and you get paid for the amount of time people play your game, and if you have a shorter game, a narrative game, then you will obviously get less cash for that, he said. I'm super open to more playing games, but if it affects how we make games, then we have a problem. For what it's worth, Xbox's boss, Philip Spencer, has been open and transparent about how there is no one path for payments to developers for a service like Game Pass. I don't need to go much further. I really think it just comes down to it's like how, like,
it's a weird
when it
black
comes
box.
down to the developers asking the same question that everyone else is, where we're just like, how the fuck do they make money on this shit?
I mean, well, so
it's weird.
Here's the thing, though, is like we've had Phil Spencer talk about this and say it's more of like a case by case basis, and we don't know yet. Like Xbox doesn't even know, right? Microsoft still has no idea how people get paid, because every one of those conversations, apparently, it changes a little bit on like what that amount that they're going to get and what the contract looks like. It doesn't, and I think that's kind of like, unfortunately, and that doesn't scale well, and that's kind of like a big problem that Microsoft obviously has to think about. But like, I think that's kind of a good thing because of the very, issues that Joseph is bringing up, right? Is that smaller games are obviously at a unfortunate concern here if the metric is specifically just about game played for a specific game. But I like, it's why when you're talking about metrics, no matter what the field or no matter what like you're talking about, taking metrics, you should never just look at one factor, right? Because like, just because someone played a certain amount of hours in a game doesn't mean, one, it was good, which you can't equate it to just being good, that's the reason for Game Pass. But like, two, there's a number of different factors where, a game like Florence, right? Like let's take that. That's an hour, right? Yeah, that's a very short game. That's an easy 100 completion, and you could just fly through that, right? And I think that a game like that, to his point, is obviously at a detriment when you're talking about how many hours did I play this? That's what I'm going to pay you at. And I think Microsoft, when they have those conversations and sit down with someone who creates something like, Florence, not specifically that they would or they have that kind of contract, but I'm saying like a company who says, I have this game and it is a 3-hour game and it is blah, blah, blah. Like that is Xbox's, I always say that is Microsoft's time to say, you have a shorter game, so it's not going to be based on play hours. So your payment is going to be based on, the amount of downloads, the amount of people who play to completion, like 100% a game, rather than get it and then get rid of it. Like, and there's metrics to do that, like the fact that you have that UI and you have that back-end system to count the hours in a game and equate it to that, or even if they used achievements as a way of marking completion, right? If they get that end game achievement, how many of those popped, they get a bonus for, or something like that. Or like there's different ways to do this. And I think like this is in a way a good question to ask, but also a detriment or like kind of a weird attack for Xbox when this question has already been answered in some facet of like, Joseph, the answer is out there. Like Phil has said how they get paid. There's just not an answer yet. It just depends, right? And I think the bigger part of this with like kind of a misleading title is more of how is Xbox looking to scale and how do they picture creating Game Pass as an ecosystem where there is more visibility for a dev to understand what I'm getting into, right?
Yeah. Like, it talks about how Phil Spencer has been transparent about it, but let's be honest, the fact that none of us still understand it is a little bit off-putting. Yeah. It's kind of like, this situation reminds me so vividly of, like, Tommy Wiseau with The Room, where he was paying for shit, but everyone's just like, how the fuck does he have this money? Mm-hmm. Like, to create this shit movie, like, nobody understood how anything was happening, and it's just become this, like, cult thing, like, obviously the movie has, but also nobody understands how he has money and like how he funded this movie. So it reminds me of this scenario where it's just like nobody fucking knows, dude.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And I imagine it would be kind of hard for a developer to, like, obviously there are people playing your game on Xbox Game Pass, but coming to a developer and being like, we can get people to play your game, but you will not get money for it, kind of a thing. Like, I don't know. I feel like, well, like, I would love to be a fly on the wall of some of these discussions with developers coming to Game Pass where they're like, okay, how do I get paid? And then they're like, okay, it's kind of like explaining exposure to somebody, like getting paid in exposure, but obviously they are paying them in a different way. They're literally getting paid.
That's the thing, but it's right? Is like, it's not them just saying like, oh, we're taking your game and you'll get money because other people are going to see it. Like, Xbox is still paying you, right? They're still paying you that amount for, we're going to sign a contract where we give you this money for having your game on our system for a set amount of months, and then there's probably some kind of like, you'll get X amount increase of money depending on this being something that actually brings us revenue, as in like people like buying into the system. Yeah, based on like, oh, there's either an amount of average hours played, or there's, you know, an amount of completion or amount of downloads. Like, those are probably metrics that they look at and say, you'll get a bonus based on this. And it's probably just one of those things where, from a scalability point, where if Xbox does something like that, they say, okay, you'll get an increase or some kind of merit bonus based on which one of these different things is like your highest factor, and like then negate the others or something like that, right? So like, if your main thing is amount of hours played because you have a long game, then they don't look into like, okay, how many downloads, how many blah, 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 and they give you some kind of metric of like increase of, here's a bonus because you had that many hours. But for the games that didn't have that, and it's like a shorter game, it's like, oh, but you had this many downloads, so that's great. And they negate the other parts and they say, you're getting a bonus of whatever it is based in the contract of having that many downloads. And like, I'm sure there's ways that this can happen, right? But yeah, you're totally right. There's no transparency in that limelight of like saying, this is exactly the numbers that you'll get. And I think it's one of those things where like, I don't think we'll ever see that with the way Microsoft is, just because Microsoft seems to be very secretive about certain things and transparent about others. But I think the transparency we'll get is when they have like, oh, we figured out a more scaled solution, and kind of like the high level details of something like that, of like what I described, but never the like the nitty gritty, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Joseph Ferris brings up a good point, and so did you, is that it's like, he's not necessarily saying that it won't work. He's just saying that if like Xbox Game Pass and like if Microsoft wants to create a sustainable platform, then there needs to be a way for developers to actually make money, and it to make sense how it makes money, to actually bring more people in. But currently, we don't even know if that's something that they want to do. Like, we've talked about just we've talked about hypothetically the Netflix of video games, but we have yet to see if that actually works, what kind of actual model that will be. Right. Like, I think it's a good point that Joseph Ferris brings up, and is that we need to, like, I like that it's kind of like a warning in a sense, where Joseph Ferris is just like, Microsoft, if you want to do this, you have to actually start doing something about it. Like, start talking about it, start developing it, instead of like having it so just ineffable, like nobody understands, you can't even put it into words how weird this shit is. So I think it's a good point he brings up. But our last news story over on GameSpot, this one's a weird one, let's be real, and I actually am excited to talk about it because there is a weird wrinkle that's not actually mentioned in this article. This is over on GameSpot. It's written by Haley Williams, and it is, this Steam developer found a shortcut to very positive reviews. In the first thing, you look at a game on Steam, or game on Steam's is aggregated reviews rating. You might want to check that rating a little closer. One Steam developer has discovered that the developer and publisher fields can easily masquerade as review scores if your studio's name is very positive. The quirky developer name was picked up on the Game Discover Co. newsletter and later tweeted by Patrick Klepek with a screenshot showing the game's Emoji Evolution, or the game Emoji Evolution by developer very positive. Essentially, the game itself has its recent reviews are mixed, and its overall reviews are mostly positive. Supposedly, they are tricking people into thinking they have very positive reviews across the board because their developer name and publisher name is very positive. So it gets people, I guess. I don't really see how, because they're like entirely different fields. I mean, if the two still exist.
If you're scrolling really quick and you just see very positive, maybe they just go with it. I don't know. Like, I think it's an interesting, like, it's a very clever way of doing it. Like, it's shady as fuck, but like, it's kind of smart.
I mean, I don't even know. Like, we have yet to see anywhere where the developer has actually, like, as far as I know, the developer, other than making this joke that it's like, should we rename our studio overly positive or overwhelmingly positive? Like, that's they obviously understand it there, but us saying it's shady means that they thought that this would happen, that they decided to go with this name because they thought that this mix-up would happen, which I currently, like, I don't think any of us actually know if they meant to do this. So I don't want to say that it's shady. The one thing I find really weird about it is that, and this isn't mentioned in the article, if you try to actually go to Emoji Evolution on Steam and you click on the link, it does not send you to the game page. It sends you to the front store page, and if you try to look up Emoji Evolution in Steam, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's gone. I'm pretty sure it got taken down.
It's seemingly delisted.
Yeah, it got delisted. Yeah.
Which I think is kind of fucked up, because they didn't do anything wrong. Their studio name is very positive. So it's just like, at this point, Steam is, like, Valve and Steam are saying that, like, you can't have your name have anything, like, they're essentially saying that this is bad, that they did a bad thing, when it's like, you can't actually prove that they had any sort of nefarious thoughts behind this. Like, maybe they just named their fucking studio very positive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. If this studio comes out and they're just like, yeah, we fucking tricked you, we got you, you dumbasses bought our game, like, fuck you. I mean, I don't know, but, like, right. It's shown that their game actually does have positive reviews.
Yeah,
like, I mean, it does. Like, people, maybe its recent reviews are mixed, but overall, like, the mass majority of their reviews are positive. Mm-hmm. So they seemingly are not tricking people.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is, like, even if they were, like, I don't think this is a reason to take something down, right? Like, maybe we don't know, and maybe there's something that was shady other than this. But, like, if it was just this, like, how are you supposed to tell? Like, maybe this was even before Steam was a thing, and that's obviously not the case. But, like, if you just wanted a studio that was about positivity, and you were like, very positive studios, like, that's what I want. Like, you can't just tell them, oh, because on Steam that's the way we do ratings, like, that you can't have that name. Like, come on now.
And I feel like if you start to get into the idea of, like, policing what developers can and can't do, and you start taking away their Steam page because of it, like, possibly. This is me jumping to a conclusion, but currently you literally cannot find this fucking game. So, like, the conclusion that I jumped to, I imagine it's accurate. Because it's just like, it doesn't exist. You can't find it. It takes you to the homepage even though the link still exists. Like, It seems delisted. It's very odd. But it seems like this is a very slippery slope where you're like, no, you can't name your studio this because it might result in this. So then where does it come down to? Like, they start to get into other things that they find shady, like Radalika, like people purchasing those games because they are, one, cheap, and two, like, on PlayStation they're easy platinums, and it's possible that on Steam that they're easy to get the achievements for. Like, when do you start cracking down on more of what developers can and can't do on your platform? Like, when do they start going, like, no hentai games? You know what I mean? Like, they take away that NSFW. Like, I'm not willing to exist in that world, dude.
All of this was just a weird strat for you to try to make sure that they don't take those away from you. You're just like, unacceptable.
No, I do, and this is very tinfoil hat of me, I'm being honest. Like, it's a huge leap to think that this in any way would lead to that, but I just don't understand why seemingly you would delist a game because of this. Where it's like, they didn't do anything wrong. Like, you realize that people are actually doing some fucked up shit. Like, there are games that exist on Steam that have very positive reviews for, like, and it's been proven that those are not actually real for the most part, and they do nothing about it. Like, they have it. I guess the weird thing I find is, like, the things they choose, the hills they choose to die on, in a sense, is like, why would you revoke this game? But there are so many games that on your store that are just, like, they're fucked up. Yeah. Like, the reason they exist is just to get people to purchase something without knowing what they're actually buying.
Yeah.
And I just find it so odd.
I don't know. And once again, we don't know the story to why this game is gone, so keep that in mind. But
very true.
Yeah, if that is the reason, though, I definitely disagree with it as well. But
yeah, a lot of this is just a leap. It's an assumption, but it seems super sketch in general. But it's time for us to hop into News Cram.
Let's get Cram, baby. Huh.
Oh yeah, Big Josh boy, it's Cram time. So, News Cram is our weekly wrap-up segment where we, the hosts of IndiePod and Indie Games Podcast, cram you full of all sorts of indie game news. This week, we do have some quick news stories for you, and I'm going to get our new deals and quick steals out of the way currently. There's fucking sales everywhere, dude. Just, like, there's a Steam Lunar sale.
Your money
there's
away.
the Lunar New Year sale that actually ends the day after we record this, so I'm going to post about it on our Twitter account, so make sure you follow us at IndiePod. Like, Epic is having a sale. Everybody's having fucking sales. I'm not going to go through all of it. There's a bunch of indie games on sale. Check them out. They're awesome. I'm going to be buying some. You should be buying some. Just buy some shit.
What you going to buy? What you going to buy?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to buy Transistor. I know that.
Oh, yeah?
Like, there are a couple, like, there are some
Transistor?
indie games. I have... Okay, so I've never purchased Transistor. I got it when it was a PlayStation Plus game on my PlayStation, but now that my Plus has lapsed, I can't play it. So Transistor's like $3 or $4 right now. So it's like, why not? Because I do eventually want to play it because I do very much enjoy the studio. So I'm like, I got to play this game. Like, I love Bastion. I think Hades is awesome.
Yep.
Have yet to play Pyre. I might buy Pyre. I don't know. It's up in the air currently.
Good stuff. All
But
right.
Supergiant is fucking great. So I want to check that shit out. And I got like the hiccups and burps right now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was quite...
I'm having some issues. So,
okay. We'll get through it.
Our first quick news story for today comes by way of IGN, where it's reported that open-world survival craft game Valheim by Iron Gate AB has sold over 1 million copies within its first 8 days of being released in early access on Steam.
My friends are all crazy about it, too.
I want to check it out. It looks fucking cool. Like, I'm a fan of survival craft games, so I might pick this up. It's like $20. It seems really cool. It's hitting it off on Steam, or not only like on Steam itself, selling a shitload of copies, but on Twitch, it's got a shitload of concurrent players and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to check it out. It seems pretty cool. That Metroidvania Bloodstained Ritual of the Night by Artplay didn't just receive a classic mode in its last update, but a hidden 1986 mode as well. This mode isn't for the faint of heart because it's meant to drastically increase the difficulty of the game. This feature can be unlocked by, and this is a quote from Joe Scrubbles on IGN because I didn't want to write this down, by heading to the classic mode title screen and entering the Konami code up, up, down, down, left, right, horizontal left face button, horizontal right face button, and you'll see 1986 mode appear at the bottom of your screen. Apparently this turns your character like green, and it makes the game a lot harder. So once again, that was a quote from Joe Scrubbles over on IGN. If it's wrong, lob some shit at him. I didn't do anything.
Good to know.
Now over on Polygon, where it's reported that upcoming Metroidvania Axiom Verge 2 by Thomas Hap Games LLC will launch exclusively on the Epic Games Store for PC versions of the game when it comes out later this year. Of course, it's coming to consoles as well. It's just the PC version is exclusive to the Epic Games Store.
Okay, go to the Switch.
Now over to Nintendo Life, where it's reported that the upcoming co-op puzzle game, It Takes Two by Hazelight Studios, will not be coming to the Nintendo Switch. In fact, studio founder Joseph Ferris says they're not sure we can do it actually. Like, they literally don't know if they can put it on the Switch. And that's very interesting.
It's interesting because that's probably what Obsidian should have.
Where it would do the best and shit. Like, let's do this.
Well,
but yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, like looking toward it and being like, could we feasibly put our game on Switch? Obsidian definitely should have done that as well.
Oh well.
And lastly, over on The Gamer, it's reported that Platonic Games developers of the 3D platformer Yooka-Laylee have announced that they will be opening a publishing arm of the company called Platonic Friends, as well as teasing their very first game, which will be revealed sometime soon. Now on to a whole lot of new stuff. Our first 8 items in new stuff come by way of Nintendo Life, where it's reported that Lonely Mountains Downhill by Megagon Industries is officially getting a limited physical release through Super Rare Games. To get a physical copy, head over to Super Rare Games' website on February 18th at 6 p.m. GMT and fork over a mere $37.37. Which I thought was so funny because it's like 27 pounds, but that in American dollars is $37.37. That action RPG King of Seas by 3D Clouds is headed to the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC via Steam sometime this May. That RPG Ved, that's just VED, by Clan is headed to the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC via Steam sometime in 2022. I will admit, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One things I'm not 100% sure on, just because in the article it says other platforms. But it is guaranteed coming to Switch and PC via Steam in 2022. So just keep that in mind. That action platformer Cathedral by December Born Interactive is headed to the Nintendo Switch on February 18th. That puzzle game Harmony's Odyssey by Mythic Owl is headed to the Nintendo Switch and Steam and PC via Steam sometime later this year. That simulation game Doodle Devil Evolution, which is the 3rd entry in the series. At least I think that's how you're supposed to say it, unless it's like 3-volution. Because that's how it's spelled. It's very weird. By Joybits Ltd. is headed to the Nintendo Switch on March 11th. That co-op moving simulator Moving Out by SMG Studio and DEVM Games is set to receive new paid DLC on February 25th, titled Movers in Paradise. The DLC includes 14 new story levels, 4 new movers, and much more, yet no price was given. No price point was given. And lastly, that action-adventure game, Puss! It's Puss. It's like Pussycat. It's Puss, with an exclamation point. By Team Koi is heading to the Nintendo Switch on February 19th. Now over to Polygon, where it's reported that the much-anticipated 1.5 update for Stardew Valley has officially come to consoles and includes a new island, new NPCs, questlines, and more. Now I can stop talking about this fucking update, dude. I'm so annoyed with it. It's done. Stop talking about it.
I'm sure they'll find a way for you to start going on about it again.
Oh, yeah, in like 5 days, I'll see 6 million articles about what the possible next update of Stardew Valley will be. And I'll be like, dude, I'm not talking about it. Like, I only talk about it when it's concrete. They're like, it might come out in a week, and then it comes out 2 months later. I'm like, shut up, stop. I'm sick of it.
I love it.
Not talking about it anymore. Now over to Twinfinite, where it's reported that upcoming third-person action-adventure game Binary Smoke by Outside Game Studio is headed to the Epic Games Store, yet no release date was given. That skating game Skate City by Agents. It's Agens. It's like Agents, but without a T. It's very weird. And Room 8 is headed to the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, and PC via both Steam and the Epic Games Store sometime soon. Now over on IGN, where it's reported that wholesome management simulator Spiritfarer by Thunder Lotus Games is getting 3 free DLCs throughout this year, which will bring 4 new spirits to the game. Lily, who is seemingly already available in the game, and I believe is Stella's sister, if I'm correct. Beverly, who's coming in summer of 2021, and both Jackie and Daria coming in fall of 2021. These updates will also include new recipes, new structures, and many quality of life improvements. That puzzle game, Maquette. I don't know how to say it. It's Maquette by Graceful Decay is headed to the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC via Steam on March 2nd and will feature the talents of Bryce Dallas Howard and Seth Gable. Apparently Seth Gable is on Fringe. I had no fucking idea where he is, like where he's from in general in the industry. But Bryce Dallas Howard, you know her from like The Village, like the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and like Jurassic World. I think she's awesome. She's also in like that episode of Black Mirror. Like, Bryce Dallas Howard's awesome. I love her. And Now, over on The Gamer, and these are going to be the last few articles for News Cram, where it's reported that 3D action platformer, and this news story specifically was written by Chris, which I thought was cool.
Yeah,
but where it's reported that 3D action platformer Pumpkin Jack by Nicholas, Messanier, maybe is how you say their name, is headed to PlayStation 4 on February 24th. That 2D platformer Get a Grip Chip by Red Start Interactive is headed to the Nintendo Switch on March 25th. That adventure RPG Everhood by Chris Norgin and Jordi Roca is headed to the Nintendo Switch and PC via Steam on March 4th. That seems like a Josh-ass game, by the way. Have you checked out Everhood?
No, I have not. Everhood.
Basically, the article talked about it being like a mix between Guitar Hero and Undertale, and it looks very interesting. It looks very rhythm based, where you were like essentially jumping over these different beats and like hitting them back at people.
Oh.
And the aesthetic is very Undertale. I would recommend checking it out. If anybody's listening to this likes those two things. One, obviously the article over on The Gamer first made the comparison between Guitar Hero and Undertale, but it's a very apt comparison. So one, head over to The Gamer, check out their articles, and two, check out Everhood. It looks very cool.
Downloading the demo right now. I will get back to you on that, because this, just looking at I haven't looked at an actual video of it, but looking at the images, I'm like, it
looks like a Josh-ass game.
This looks like my kind of game. Yeah, it looks really trippy. Rhythm part to it. I'm into it. Yeah. I'll keep you posted.
All right. And lastly, that adventure game Inspector Waffles by
what a good fucking
Goloso Games is headed to the PC via Steam on March 23rd. All right, Big Josh, we've been blessed with so many amazing indie game news stories that it's time that we give back to the creators in our next segment, God Bless the Crowd. This is where the biggest of average Josh boys hops into all sorts of crowdfunding sites, finds something awesome for us to talk about, and we do just so. This week we are headed over to Kickstarter to talk about a game called The Way of Wrath. It is a story-driven open-world tactical RPG set in a prehistoric shamanistic world inspired by Baldur's Gate, Gothic, and The Legend of Zelda. The team is currently looking for $27,877. At the time of this recording, they have $20,682 with 460 backers and 20 days left to go. The development studio is called Animal. That's Animmal. It is, I believe, only two people. They might have other people helping as well, but the fact that this was created mostly from two people is pretty fucking crazy. To get in on the ground floor, you got to pay the $25 to get the digital edition, which will give you a digital copy of the game on Steam, GOG, or consoles, which is a stretch goal, access to the backer Discord channel, Discord role Thane Raider, and you get beta access, so you get to play these story chapters before everybody else, and some digital wallpapers. Big Josh Boy, what do you think about The Way of Wrath?
This very much looks like another Josh game. This is very, it feels very Divinity to me. Very old school CRPG. The actual art style to it, like the art direction that they chose, is kind of not my style, as far as it just feels like it feels like it's not finished. I don't know if that makes sense, but like there's just I feel like there could be more.
It feels unpolished, I guess.
Which I think, granted, once again with Kickstarters, you never know. It could be totally different. It could be stylized later on when they go into it. But it seems like this is an art direction, like a style they chose, which I'm not as crazy about. But the world feels very much like one. The main fact that it's Baldur's Gate and Legend of Zelda and Gothic are like great things to take inspiration from. I'm trying to look for the actual the list of the things, but there were a couple of key parts to it where I feel like this game just feels very much mine. Not mine, obviously I didn't get it, but like very much my style of just having a lot of open worlds, open choices, having the RPG mechanic, having the combat in that turn-based style of like old school, just having people on the map and being able to move them very much like a Divinity game. Like there's so much.
This is hella Divinity, dude.
Yeah,
there's so much Divinity DNA.
There's so much Divinity in this, and I'm like, I'm here for it. Personally, the story didn't really like. It doesn't do anything for me. I didn't get grabbed by it, but like the fact that you're creating your characters, the fact that you're making those choices, the fact that it has that same type of combat is something that I'm really into and something that's making me consider actually picking this one up.
Yeah, to hit on your, like, you talking about the story. So the idea of this existing in this prehistoric shamanistic society, I think is very, very cool. But when they described the, like, actual moment-to-moment storyline of the game where you are this war chief and you are trying to go around and kind of prepare yourself for like an incoming battle with these other tribes, I didn't find that very interesting at all. Like, I was like, really though? Like, that didn't sound really, it didn't sound really fun to me. I was kind of looking forward to having like this sprawling journey. I thought it was going to be very CRPG, very Divinity, but it seems like they're kind of taking like, and I hate to like say this because I don't think they ever really referred to it, but more of like a roguelite scenario where you have different characters in each playthrough, and they talk about how they're going to have their own unique stories. They're going to be entirely different. Like I personally in a CRPG, I would much rather have like me just taking my way through the entire game with one character. If I die, it's not permadeath kind of a thing. I want this large sprawled out story with these really like where it's obviously like really worked on kind of a thing, like a Divinity or like a Torment, like a Planescape Torment or something like that. Like it's kind of weird. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, maybe I missed that because I didn't get that kind of vibe from it really, because like specifically in their descriptions they have things like classic RPG system, customize your character's appearance, origin, skills, and reputation, full RPG story experience, solve complex quests, gather loyal companions, and befriend, antagonize, or romance interesting characters. Like, it sounds to me like you're still going to be in this one specific world, but like I don't know, because
see, I'm not sure because they say, like, in the video, they say every playthrough is going to be different, which is like, okay, that's something that people typically say in, like, CRPGs, but it makes me think for some reason that it's going to, like, your playthroughs are not going to be long, I guess. I guess I might just be reading into that a little bit too much.
I think you're reading into that because I think they're trying to go for like every person will have their own experience because they have their own choices. Like, I don't think it's going to be much to that roguelike aesthetic. Like, I might be wrong and maybe I'm reading into it differently, but that's what I took from that.
Well, I very much hope that you are correct, because I think this game would be really awesome if it's more of like a built-upon CRPG and less like geared toward what I believed it would be, which is like more of a roguelite scenario. But I think if I can like build up, like, this is my world, this is my character's world, and if I start another character, I can make it different. Like, it talks about having 8 different origin stories kind of a thing, like very distinct origin stories that's very... like Dragon Age Origins. I fucking love that.
Here we go. Okay, no, you are kind of right. A new take on the choice-driven story. With a massive enemy army looming on horizon, you have a handful of in-game days to prepare for a massive enemy siege. Each new day is also like a new story chapter that moves storylines forward and updates the map with new non-procedural and handcrafted quests. You need to make every day count as you can explore the open world map, find new quests, fight enemies, hunt, fish, and command your allies to collect resources or build fortifications.
I think that's cool, but I would much rather have a large sprawling story in a CRPG, to be honest, because that is kind of like the staple. But I'm glad they are, like, I mean, that's how genres get formed. That's how things like continually get better and better, is people iterating on a genre that exists already. So I'm glad that this is happening. I think this is awesome. Like, this may be really cool. It's not going to be something I back immediately just because, like I said, if I'm playing a CRPG, I want it to be like a long experience. I want this to be me carrying my character through like this sprawling journey. Like, I'm a fan of The Lord of the Rings, and that shit takes 25 hours to fucking watch.
Yeah.
So like, that's the shit I want. I don't want like, I guess the equivalent of this to like the comparison to Lord of the Rings, whereas like I would say Divinity, Lord of the Rings. That is an apt comparison, at least in my opinion. This sounds more of like an anthology series where it's like they're all kind of in the same thing, but they're different stories every time, kind of a scenario. I'm wondering like, I'm wondering how long it actually takes to get through
that's
these
a good
in-game
question. Yeah,
days
that's a good
and stuff
question.
like that. Like, I mean, if it's like fucking 40 hours to get through 3 days or whatever, like that's a different scenario entirely. But if it's like, oh, okay, within like maybe a less than a 10-hour period, you will have to restart your game and play through it a different way, I might be like, I'll chill. Like, like honestly, CRPGs are like making a perfect build and like crafting your character the way you want to. It takes a lot of time to do that. And if I know that the game is essentially going to end in 10 hours, I might just be like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal.
Honestly, like I'm kind of glad you brought that up, as bad as it sounds, but like this is a no for me. And
Okay.
the immediate no is because of the fact that they're doing this. You have a set amount of days, an in-game days. Anytime a game puts this weird time pressure on me, I instantly am not as interested. So this is like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to back this. This was one that I'll probably keep an eye on and see like, is it worth it kind of a thing. But that mechanic in games is a big turnoff for me. Like I just do not enjoy it. It's why, and granted, this is kind of to my own point of, I hated Majora's Mask when I was a kid because of that 3-day thing. And like now as an adult, I love it because it's a good game. But like, I don't get into that mechanic well at all. And it's one of those things where I only revisit it because someone was like, no, you should really get into it though. It's really worth it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, time constraints are uncomfortable. Like, me personally, I feel like Dragon Age Origins did it really well, where, like, it always feels like you have a time constraint, but it's not something that's so rigorous to where, like, there's a fail state in the game or anything like that. Like, as you move through the game, the more choices that you make, you can actually see the blight moving into the map.
Right.
So, like, technically, in the storyline, you do have a time constraint, but it isn't actually reflected in any sort of gameplay sense.
Yep.
So I can still get everything I want out of it, even though the story technically, like, it may take me, it seems like it's been years in this world. It's actually only a couple months or like a couple days kind of a deal.
Yep.
Like, I mean, similar to that, like The Last of Us Part 2, where like Ellie is, she's obviously got some time constraints going on. It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like everything that you do, you're like afraid you can't go search a cupboard or anything because you're afraid that like you're going to run out of time, kind of a deal. So, I mean, not saying that this game is like that, but I would like to know exactly how it works before I would purchase it. That is also why I would be on the side of like not backing it currently, but it might be something that I pick up later. Like if I could see this elaborated on and it's like, oh, okay, it'll take you 25 hours to get through these days or whatever. Like you can actually invest some time in this world. I may actually do it. I may check it out because I think it's cool, but until we get like just a little bit of like a more fleshed out scenario that's going to go on here, I'm going to have to wait too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Personally, I think this is like, it looks good. Like, to be honest, like I still think it's probably going to be a great game, but there's little things like that I want to know more about. And I'm not, as just avidly saying like, this is one I got to get right away. But I think there's going to be people who hear this or who see this, and this is going to be the game for them. So I would recommend checking it out still.
Yeah, absolutely. If this sounds cool to you, head over to Steam. It is called The Way of Wrath. Check it out. Back it. It's only $25, of course, if you're paying in like American dollars. Otherwise, I have no idea what your currency is. But check it out. Head over. And if you enjoy it, back it. Tell us how it is if you're playing the early chapters. We would love to know how it unfolds.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
It is time for us to hop into our listener questions. Our first question this week comes by Chris Penwell. Comes by way of Mr. Penwell, always drinking tea. He writes in and says, what's the funniest joke you've witnessed in a game? Honestly, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Like, there's never been a game. There's never been a joke in a game that just blew me away to the point where, like, I vividly remember it happening. There are, like, a couple that I think are really funny, but they're not really jokes. Like, I love that in the first Fable game, if you don't update your title, everyone who sees you will be like, Chicken chaser? What? Does he chase chickens?
Dude, still
And then
to this day, I say that all the time with one of my best buddies who we both played that game.
It's so funny, dude. I mean, it's not even necessarily a joke. It's just something that it's like, titles are not a big deal in that game, but if you do not update it, literally everyone who sees you, as you get more famous, will be like, Chicken chaser? And it's so fucking stupid. I hate it.
I love it.
So, like, I enjoy that. Also, the running joke that Vaughn in Tales from the Borderlands is, like, freakishly buff, and it creeps people out because he has, like, an elliptical in his office or whatever. I found so funny where, like, they're the two main characters. I forget what their names are, but I remember Vaughn because obviously it's my name. But they're being, like, held at gunpoint, and Vaughn has to, like, take his shirt off, and the other character, I think his name is Reese, is just like, you're jacked. And he's, like, actually kind of, like, taken off. He's, like, taken back by it, and he's like, what the fuck? Like, it's weird to him that this is happening. I thought that joke was really funny. But Big Josh Boy, do you have any specific jokes that you remember in video games?
I'm pretty much the same with you. Like, there's nothing that is like that one moment where I'm like, wow, the funniest thing. But I will say the funniest game that I've played, and one that I will recommend to everyone who is somewhat of a fan of RPGs or just likes wacky games, play West of Loathing. It is so good. It is basically you as these stick figure characters, but everything in it is just ridiculous. And I would recommend even picking up the DLC that they have for it, because that one was a lot of fun too. It is so great, even to the point where I forget how you get it, but like early into the game you can enable a setting where you have like this like weird walking animation where every 2 seconds your walking animation will change, and it'll just like make you do the worm for a couple of seconds, or make you like walk backwards, or make you like roll as a tumbleweed, and like that's just your normal animation, just always, like it just keeps changing. Like the game is so spontaneous with just its writing, its style, like everything about it. It's so good.
Yeah, but yeah, I would definitely have to say Chicken Chaser.
Chicken Chaser.
You chase chickens. Chris Penwell also writes in and says, if you could start another podcast, what would it be about? Josh, we've actually, I think, answered this question before, but what would another podcast of yours be about?
I think so. I don't remember. I've talked about this early into the year, and I haven't done a single thing on it, and I probably won't. But I really do like the idea of doing a mixology thing and mixing it with games. So, creating different cocktails, creating some kind of narrative around why it represents that game, and then going into like either a review of the game or just the representation of that, like why it matches the drink, as just like small episodes. I don't know. I think it would be really cool. As far as like other podcasts, I really can't see. Like, I love talking about games. I think I'd probably jump out of the indie space for a bit, because I'd love to have, like, I just saw the other day of someone who said something about like feeling weird about, time, like especially people who are into the industry, of like, do you feel weird to actually play the game if it's not related to what you're doing as far as work, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like a strange thing. It's like right now I'm playing Final Fantasy 12 and I feel weird because like I'm not playing an indie game, right? So I don't have something to talk about on the podcast. Granted, I still had a few things to talk about, but like, maybe next week I have nothing that I want to do other than play Final Fantasy 12. And then it comes to when we have to record and I'm like, well, fuck, what am I going to do? So it's kind of weird. Like there is that level of like, I feel pressured sometimes to do that, which is a dumb sentence because I'm sure other people are like, shut the fuck up. You're playing games. But like I still have that like, that pressure to have some kind of representation into what we're doing, right? To make it seem like we know what we're talking about. So I would say probably if I was going to do another podcast, it would probably be something about games, or the very completely like opposite side of that is what I already do for work, which is I have it's not really like a podcast, but it's a video series that I do, and it's very business heavy. It's like me talking to people about running businesses and shit. So it's like it's so focused, so professional. It's not at all what this is.
It's the exact opposite.
The
of what
exact
any thought is.
opposite. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, I actually vividly remember answering this question before because Sam said he'd listen to our podcast, and you talked about how you would make a roguelite podcast, and Sam was like, I would totally fucking listen to that.
I would like to do that. That would be good.
Yeah, I've got the age-old ones where it's like I would love to do a podcast about experiencing the narrative of video games from a different perspective. That was one that I talked about.
Yes, I do remember this conversation, and I would love to listen to that podcast, but that would take a lot of time and effort to put in.
It would take so fucking much. Like when Jacob McCourt was talking about his other podcast and how it takes up so much of his life, I'm like, if I ever did this, dude, I barely have any time now.
I know.
Like I had to skip the stream because I had to do my
I was so
homework.
mad, dude.
Like,
I was like ready to play Cuphead. I was like, oh, I'm gonna play games. You were like, no. I was like, no. Right.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I just got so much fucking homework to do.
Guess I'll
it's so stupid. I hate it so much.
Guess I'll just do something else.
Yeah. Time fucking sucks, dude. Time blows. I hate it. But yeah, so that would be one that I would create. I would also love to do like an MMO podcast because I fucking love MMOs, dude.
Dude,
I love them so much. This classic gaming podcast thing is so funny.
So yeah, for people who are listening, which like the patrons, I'm going on to the Classic Gaming Podcast on Tuesday this week, Tuesday specifically. So when this goes live, and dude, when they told me their question was to rank the top 5 MMOs, I was like, bruh, you picked the wrong person to go on for this episode. That's why I tried so hard to be like, Vaughn, would you please just go on to this episode? Because I'm literally gonna
essentially like begged me, and I was like, I can't, dude.
I'm literally gonna go on, and I'm gonna be like, they're gonna be like, what's your favorite MMO? I'm gonna be like, MMOs fucking blow, dude. Like, let me list the reasons why these are bad games. Like, it's so, oh man, I'm gonna fucking. I don't like it.
I loved so much that Rob was just like, if you want to, you can have Vaughn write a list of his favorite MMOs and you can read it for him.
I'm like, I'm not going to do that. What the fuck?
I thought that was so fucking funny, dude. So if I were to create another podcast, possibly about like MMOs, but no, I totally understand what you're saying when it comes to like feeling like you're wasting your time.
Oh, I feel like, that 100% in everything in my life. Like, it's not even just the podcast. Like, that's who I am personally. Is like everything is about like, am I being productive? It's like, it doesn't matter what it equates to. It's just like what my brain thinks is productive at the moment.
Yeah, like there are those times when I just don't play any indie games. I'm like, when I get back into Elder Scrolls Online for a couple weeks and I just play that relentlessly with every fiber of my being. And
see, that's even worse because I have more pressure because I know that I can't rely on you.
So yeah, no, I feel so bad about it, but that's also why like I tell people that they can, like, when guests come on, it's like, no, it doesn't have to be specifically an indie game. We could talk about just games you're playing, kind of a deal. Like, I don't want it to be a huge deal, but kind of a thing. Yeah, it's odd. I do feel that pressure, though. Like, I currently, at like, every now and then, I mean, I feel weird that I'm streaming Souls-like games.
Yeah,
I actually feel
true.
Uncomfortable about that. Because I'm like, maybe I should pick up like Necropolis, play that because it is a Souls-like, but it's also an indie game and it's a roguelite, so it'd be pretty interesting. Maybe I should play Titan Souls. Maybe I should play Salt and Sanctuary.
Pick up Valheim and just start playing that.
Like, yeah, there's so many things, but I feel weird playing those, even though I only play like 4 hours a week.
I know, it's like whatever.
Yeah, it's a little odd. But Phil, actually, the Wombat Emperor of Australia, writes in and answers this specific question. He says, I'm sure this has already been done, but I always thought a cool podcast idea would be a podcast called something like The Randomizer, which you watch a random episode of a long-running TV show neither host has ever seen, so there is no context of what is going on. Review it as best you can and determine at the end whether you would watch the whole show now, adding it to your back catalog to watch or skip the show entirely. I think that would be a kind of like an interesting podcast idea. But like, you would run out of material so quick, I feel like, if it had to be a long-running TV show.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the definition would change later in, but like there's so much fucking content out there. Like there's no way. And like if it's someone like me who barely watches TV, like everything would be new to me.
I would love so much for somebody to have to jump into a series like Game of Thrones that's super complicated and they've never actually watched an episode and they're like, what the fuck is happening? I feel like 90% of the time if you went for a complex show instead of like a sitcom, you'd get them being like, no, I wouldn't watch this because I don't know what's fucking happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, granted, I would argue that in some cases that's okay. WandaVision was a great version of that for me, where I didn't jump into like a random episode in it, but I watched the first episode of WandaVision. I don't know anything about like superhero movies or whatnot because I haven't watched a superhero movie since like Iron Man, which means I know none of the MCU like timeline.
Literally the first MCU
like
movie?
Yeah, so like I know like nothing from the timeline or who Wanda or Vision was before getting into this, and I was just like, oh, this looks interesting. Like, well, what the hell is this? And I was like so confused, but it was so weird that I was like, all right, I'm into it. And so like I've just stuck with it because I'm like, this is fucking weird, but I like it.
Yeah.
So
I get it. Like some things don't require you to hop in, but there are TV shows that are just built around previous knowledge, like a Game of Thrones. Because they refer back to so many different events. Versus like, I feel like WandaVision is a little bit better. Like this is coming from somebody who hasn't watched it, but it's also more of like it's meant to be. It is deep, but it's more of like a sitcom format, even though it has much darker undertones from what I understand.
Well, yes and no, because it's like it has that sitcom feeling, but like once you're past episode 2, it's like, oh, what is happening right now? And it goes very much into a deep story. Like if you jumped into a random episode of WandaVision now, like in like episode 4 or 5, you'd be like, what's going on here? But
this is weird.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. But I think that's a cool podcast idea, Phil. If you ever decide to do it, I will listen because you got that silky smooth voice. You got that good, dude.
Hell yeah.
I got to hear more Phil. And Philip Renshaw, the Wombat in for Australia, also writes in and says, what are some rules that you would have in an indie pod drinking game? If I had a shot every time Vaughn says very cool or Josh mentions some card game, I'm pretty sure I'd be so smashed quickly.
Philip hates when I talk about card games. I love it.
I don't feel like anybody actually hates it. They just like, I think they've all kind of gone into the idea of like the whole like Josh hates card games thing and how it's now a joke where you often, I swear, like every other game that you mention, it does have something to do with cards.
Because that's the new big thing, man. There's just a lot of like, but like Loop Hero has cards and it's like, they don't mean anything. It's just, it's a mechanic in the game. It has nothing to do with cards. It's just like,
and it's also
you could call
just
them
your
tiles.
defense of not liking card games is just the funniest fucking thing. You're like, I don't like card games, but I like roguelite deck builders that are heavily featuring cards. Honestly,
Dude,
it depends. Like,
Philip would die.
If we want to fucking kill people, we could make this game super hard. Because like Josh pointed this out, it's like a 2-hour, sometimes more episode. Like this is over 2 hours now. Like I don't know if I currently don't know if I actually say very cool that often, but seemingly it's often enough to where Phil thinks that he would get fucking done.
Yeah.
So seemingly I say very cool.
Very cool.
Often.
Very cool.
Also, like, apparently, like, the very cool thing, definitely the card game thing for Josh. Maybe every time I call him Big Josh Boy instead of calling him Josh, or just say the words Big Boy.
Big Boy.
I think it'd be fucking done.
Good jelly, not my jam.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you fuck up while reading. Every time I say roguelite.
Yeah.
Every time... God, what else do we do?
That'd be so funny if it was every time we said indie game.
Indie
and
game?
They'd be like, you're dead.
Done.
Guaranteed. You'd be fucking dead.
Yeah.
So it all kind of depends. Like, I mean, do we want to kill people? If we're out for that, dude, you'd be 100% dead.
You got it there.
Guaranteed every episode you'd be gone. Yeah, I'd feel bad for you. But if we were keeping it somewhat like if you're keeping it somewhat lax, I feel like we could, I don't know, add a little bit of each. You know what I mean? Like, if I feel like I don't talk about hentai that often. Okay, like
I feel like,
but I talk about it often enough to where you'd have to drink a couple times.
yeah,
Not
okay,
a lot,
okay,
but a couple
okay,
times.
yes.
It's not like the big boy thing where like you drink so often.
Yeah.
You'd be fucking dead. But if it was like every time Vaughn mentions hentai, like I'd be like, okay, you'd probably drink like maybe 2 times an episode, maybe more, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I like it though. I like the idea of it.
Oh, 100%. If you want to play an indie pod drinking game, feel free. Make sure your sexy girlfriend sends us your obituary. Now, let's go up to Zach. Zach writes in and says, I loved Dark Cloud on PS2 as a kid, but I'm kind of afraid to revisit it because I'm worried it won't hold up at all. Do you have any games that you are scared to replay because it might sour the good memory of the game? Josh, do you have any?
So first off, let me just start with like, I don't really replay a lot of games. It's just not what I'm into. I usually will only replay it if they come out with like a remaster or something changes drastically with a game. With the exception of like roguelikes and roguelites, because that's the whole mechanic is play them over and over again until they're like,
it's all about replayability.
Yeah. But other than that, like normally, most games I don't go back to, but like, I think if I had to choose two that I think might or like I wouldn't. So the first one is I think it would be bad now if I went back, and that's Fable, which I loved Fable.
Dude, play that anniversary edition, bro. It's so good.
I don't want to go back because I know I won't like it as much. But the second one is Wuppo, and Wuppo is an indie game that I have a lot of love for. And that one I think would still be fine, but it's one of those things where I don't want to go back and find out I don't like it because it would just, I want to keep loving it.
Yeah, you have such a pristine memory of it.
Yeah.
One thing, actually, I might buy Wuppo on the Steam sale because it's like $2. It's very cheap.
Fucking get that game, bro.
So I might pick it up. I don't know if I'm going to play it, but I might pick it up. I own it on PlayStation 4, so obviously me owning a video game does not mean I will ever play it.
Why do you do this?
I was talking to my friend earlier. I was like, yeah, there are just some games that you come across and you're just like, I have to buy it because it's so cheap. Like, I might never play it, but I have to buy it.
So foolish. Oh, my God.
But yeah, there's of course like the I brought up Bastion before, going back to it and just being like, this game is not it is not as beautiful as I remember it being. Like, it definitely looks wonky as fuck. But I still love it. Like, it did tarnish the memory in my head of it being this pristine game, but I still love it. So I wouldn't be too afraid of going back to Dark Cloud, but like there are games that like I remember so vividly as amazing video games when I was a kid, and I will talk about them now saying they are amazing, but I know for a fact that they're probably ballsack. Like Castlevania, Curse of Darkness, I fucking love that game as a kid, and I still love it now. I think it... I mean, I have yet to really play it, but I feel like it'll hold up, but I'm terrified of going back and playing it because every Castlevania fan is like, it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to. But I've tried to before, and I've been like, this ain't good. It's not a good game. There are others that I would like to go back to. Like, I want to play Champions of Norath again, but I doubt it will hold up. In my head, it's so vividly a good game, but I can almost guarantee you it's going to be dog shit if I play it again. There are games like Spectrobes, love it, but I can guarantee you it's not good. Like, it's not a good game. Or like Fossil Fighters, like all the games that I vividly remember being
playing
amazing when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this game sucks.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
So there are quite a few, but I would recommend, Zach, go back and play some Dark Cloud. I don't think that it will tarnish your memory, like, in a sense. It will, you gain a new perspective on it, but you will not think it's dog shit. Like, there's never been a game that I would jump back into and I'm like, this game eats fat cock. kind of a deal. Like there's always a reason that I loved it, and that exists in my later life. Even though I come at things more critically now, like I'll rewatch old series or I'll play old games that I used to play and I'm like, oh yeah, there's so much wrong with it. I still love it. So I don't think that you should be afraid and not playing a game and not revisiting it because you're afraid of it. Kind of like you're afraid of losing that memory, because it still exists. Like I still remember vividly loving Bastion, even though I think it looks like caca now. Kind of a deal. Like it's a great game, but certain aspects of it look like caca. So lastly, we'll see, says paper or plastic.
Why not
I mean,
both?
it depends on what you mean. Like, if we're talking about prophylactics, I mean, I'd like to go for plastic. I've never tried paper, but I feel like that's not a good idea in general. Definitely get some seepage there. I mean, if we're talking about, like, maybe diapers, probably plastic. I mean, I feel like they'd be uncomfortable. But paper,
Are you going to wear the diapers?
I understand. You know, what'd you say?
Are you going to wear the diapers?
I mean, if I had to, like, I think this is a choice between
what is
the
a
paper
reason
or
that you would
plastic
have to
versions.
wear a diaper?
Incontinence, like I'm old, you know.
Okay.
Speaking of, I've made fun of people pooping their pants for the longest time, but like
Gonna come back.
just the other day, I kind of had to go to the bathroom and I stood up to like close the window and I almost pooped my pants. I'm not even joking. It was so close. I was like, oh, and then I stopped. I was like, whoo. That was a close call.
Clincher.
So, yeah, I mean, depending on what you're talking about, the decision changes.
True.
Kind of a deal. Like, I mean, like a diaper that's plastic, not good for the environment. But if it's paper, you can recycle it. Paper or plastic plates, technically I can use a plastic plate a bunch of times, but I can recycle a paper plate. Like, when it comes to money, I actually used to not really use my bank account. I would only ever put money in it if I wanted something on a website where I would have to actually purchase it with a card. So I would always get my checks just cashed and just carry around like hundreds of dollars in cash.
What?
That's how that's how little I worry about getting robbed in Idaho, or at least in Boise, Idaho,
Must be
for the
nice.
most part. But then I went to go move to Pocatello, and I was like, gotta get a bank account. That place is sketchy as fuck. Like, I immediately changed, and I put, now only, I carry a minimum, I carry a small amount of cash on me to cover anything that, like, if my card gets declined, I have, like, $50. I'm like, okay, cool. I can pay for that in cash. Kind of a thing. Like, my card will never decline, hopefully. But if I have to, I can pay for it in cash. Kind of a deal. But overall, yeah, I use a debit card.
Yeah. No way. Credit card for life. I don't want no cash on me.
I don't really fuck with credit cards either, by the way. I didn't get a credit card until recently. Actually, my credit was so bad that I couldn't get a credit card until recently.
Oh yeah, it's because you don't have one. You haven't done anything
Yeah,
with it.
but now I do have a credit card because I've got slightly better credit. Well, I have to because we're trying to get a house, but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So there you go. I mean, it just depends on the scenario, Will. Like I'm telling you, if I was to try to wear a paper condom, I feel like it wouldn't go well, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason it doesn't exist. That's why nobody likes lambskin.
It's funny. It's funny that your mind went there first, because when it came, like when the question popped up from Will and it said paper or plastic and just that, because it was Will, I instantly was like, it's latex. What is this paper or plastic thing? Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know why my mind went there as well.
I mean, I initially, when I saw it, I thought he meant money, but then I was like, how can I make this funny? So I was like, I'm going to go for condoms.
Instantly
But I
went
love that your
condoms.
initial thought was condoms.
I was like, that's clearly what this is about, right?
Yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. I mean, also, like, bags at the grocery store, plastic. I don't fuck with the paper bag, but it's also because we use them for like cat litter and stuff like that. And paper bags tend to rip way more often.
That sounds awful.
It's so much harder to bag too. We have to bag our own groceries at Winco, so yeah, not a fan.
Wow.
But that is all the questions we've got. So thank you guys so much for writing in your questions. You're all amazing. Of course, one last time, got to go through the housekeeping. Please check out the Chris Gween developer interview going live one day after for patrons, 2 days before for plebes. That is about the adventures of Chris. Please check it out. Go over to Teespring, pick up our merch, our t-shirts and stickers over there at the IndiePod store. Check out the YouTube channel over IndiePod. It's just IndiePod on YouTube. Check it out. We don't have a custom URL because we're not cool, but check it out. Please leave us reviews on any sort of platform that you can do so, whether that is a listening platform or otherwise. Please do so. And lastly, thank you so much to our patrons: Will C, Mixomatosis, aka Mix, Zach Durham, Chase Hopkins, Philip Renshaw, the Wombat Emperor of Australia, Chris Penwell, drink so much tea it actually kind of bothers me, Active Josh, Mr. Josh Nichols himself, good jelly not my jam Josh, and Sam Fillion from Canada. You're all amazing. Thank you so much for being patrons. If you would like to chat with us outside the show, you can do so in a bunch of different ways. Make sure to follow us at IndiePod on Twitter to get notifications of anything we did not talk about on the episode or is time sensitive. Make sure to do so there. Notifications of the episodes, indie game news, all that fun stuff. That's at IndiePod. Actually, not make sure. You can not follow me if you want. It's at Hydelegion, HYDELEGION, for notifications of when I go live on Twitch, which is from 10 p.m. MST, so Mountain Standard Time, to 12 a.m. MST on Saturdays and Sundays. Check that out for the Souls-like stuff, or if I have the time in the week, the IndiePod streams, which are the 8:30 to 11 on Thursdays. That is, of course, MST. Me living in Idaho, MST. Please check out the Biggest of Average Josh Boys at _Jorsh90 on Twitter and _Jorsh on Twitch. Anything else you would like to pimp out before we hop off?
Nope. Just have a great day and, keep being awesome.
All right. And with that note, thank you all so much for listening. We will talk to you all next week.
Bye, fam.